Welcome, everyone. I know for those of us in the capital region, the weather's been a bit crazy this morning, but I appreciate everyone's ability to attend today. We're really excited to truly kick off our partnership with Complete College America. For those of you who attended our convening here at System back in October, will remember that we promised to deliver a series this spring that would offer campuses the opportunity to learn a little bit more about Complete College America, the services they offer, the philosophy behind their work, as well as really springboard some deep dive conversations with some national experts related to fields that you expressed interest in. So many of us submitted survey results, and we saw that you were interested in things like first year experience and academic maps and milestones. So Meacie Fairfax from Complete College America is going to talk a little bit about the sessions that she has set up for the remainder of the spring semester. But this session today is really an opportunity for you to learn more about what CCA can do for you as a SUNY campus. Of course, SUNY System is now an Alliance member. What types of services and programming that entitles you to as a SUNY campus, and also the opportunity at the end to maybe ask some questions if we have time. So without further ado, just want to once again thank all of you for attending. We have well over 50 people here today. And of course, introduce Meacie and thank her for representing Complete College America and taking us on this journey this afternoon. So Meacie, the floor is yours.
All right, fantastic. So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Casey, for the introduction. We're really thrilled to partner with you. And so there's going to be a number of things that I'm going to go through. As you have questions, I know they mentioned about I'll take them at the end, but feel free to put anything in the chat. I do have some colleagues on the line, so I will let them introduce themselves when we kind of get to that slide, but I would love to know who's on the line. So please feel free, if you would like, no pressure at all, to just drop who you are, your title, and what organization that you're at. Now, this is one of my favorite slides because I realize that there's a lot going on at this moment. And so I just would love to hear from folks, like, how are you doing today, right? And so you kind of see this rubber ducky. If you remember rubber ducky, you're the one. But from 1 to 9, I would just love to hear where you are at this moment. Like, how are you feeling given everything that's happening within our sector at this moment? And just anything that might be happening with your students, faculty, communities. And thank you for those who are putting where they're on the line. I'll give you just another like 30 seconds just to put where you are and how you're doing today, because I do realize I just came off a conversation. I'm sure many of you are having similar conversations about some of the EOs and just what are the rights, what do we have to do to comply, and what's kind of the implementation of some of the supports or the things that we need to do to keep the supports of our many of our student population at the front of our mind. It's so great to see such a diverse group of folks who are on the line. And so thank you all really for being here. I will share that I'm a bit of a 5. I've lost a little bit of a bit in my sales, but it's just in terms of just where we are right now and just the number of disruptions that are occurring within our sector and honestly across our country. And so with that being said, I wanted to just, before we talk about CCA and give you a refresher of what we talked about at the SUNY lunch, if you were there, or first time for you telling you a little bit about who CCA is, I want to share with you the upcoming webinars and our transformation series. As Casey noted, these are the ones that you selected. And as you can tell from the individuals who are sharing them, we have our AVP, Nicholas Hewitt, who will be sharing across academic maps and milestones, but you'll see the diversity in terms of those practitioners who have worked at either HBCUs, minority serving institutions, or community colleges that are going to be providing some very interactive and pretty informative information in terms of the areas that you chose. And thank you for those who continue to put their questions or put the number ones or whether in the chat. What I will say for those who just joined us, and I'll go back to the slide, I'm happy to see where you all are, because guess what? We're human, and we got to take care of ourselves and recognize that we're going to have different changes in our energy and just where we are as a moment, but we also have to take care of ourselves. So as you think about some of the responses that you heard from your colleagues, just understanding that many of the pressures that we're feeling and the need to want and to try to do more as we're kind of facing these headwinds. So I wanted, I think it would be amiss if I did talk about a little bit about the state of higher education at this moment, because we are seeing a lot of sector disruptions, of which I'm sure you all are familiar with, but I also want to note at the bottom of it, which I just put across the spectrum in terms of just all of the things that are happening. We know that we are having challenges in terms of just maintaining or even improving our mental health and well-being. We are divisive, and it's been quite divisive, and we know that our college campuses have become a battleground for political grievances and partisan debates. And so very few of it is really related to the education of our students. And so that's why we always want at CCA ground ourselves in the mission of what it is that we could do and continue the work, because we know that there's improvements that we need to make within higher education. So as we talk about that, I'm just going to mention four. I mentioned mental health, just kind of the through line here, but the political landscape. What we've seen already in terms of changing policies, funding battles, the Indiana governor who just took hold. There was a HBCU who had funding that was given over the last few years, but then has since been rescinded, right? So we're seeing all of these things and these restrictions on DEI initiatives, ones that we thought would never take hold and would threaten individuals such as veterans, disabilities, and others, and many across race, social, and economic status and immigration status, that we are really in a place where there's so much happening, and we have to think about where and how we can influence access, curriculum, and institutional priorities, which is why CCA is your partner in this work. I also want to say that the recent closure of the U.S. Agency for our U.S. aid is also serving as a critical indicator of what the administration might do to further diminish federal involvement in social and education programs. So again, what I say to folks, don't panic, plan it. And we're talking about scenario plannings and things that you can do within your landscape or within your purview. We also know that there's overall reduced funding for public schools, loss of support, as I said, for our students with disabilities, elimination of civil rights protections. So we know that we also have to make sure that we're staying in contact, and I'm sure many of you are getting information from your attorney generals and others in terms of supporting what is and what isn't feasible, and the ways that you can protect your students to be in the know. We also know that there's increased barriers to higher education, and we know that there's things that we continuously need to disrupt. But also say that when we're talking about, and part of this webinar series with what the kickoff I'm doing today and across the 4 practitioners, is to weave in about AI and how that is changing the way that we're doing the work across our campuses, and how that is now no longer an ad, and this is no longer optional, but we're seeing employers who are just really thinking about, again, this third one, workforce aligned education, and how those AI skills will come into play. And then lastly, I just want to talk about, really largely, we're seeing institutional closures and mergers. I'm here in Vermont State, so the creation and merger of Vermont State University, which is now in its 2nd year, and then many others, even my home state of Pennsylvania with the Commonwealth University and others, we're showing, and we know that we're in a time of declining enrollment and financial pressures. So we're particularly looking at and understanding that maybe many small and regional institutions are struggling to sustain their operation. But then also we know, right, as we think about this larger piece, we already knew there were demographic shifts. We know that there are changes in terms of who's our students and our student body. We know that tuition has become unsustainable for many of our students in terms of trying to come back for a degree, especially when we think about the some college no degree in terms of their need and pressure to get a job that actually can sustain them. So when we think about this, these are the things that at a high level, I just want to make sure that we had just level set to say, we understand and we know that this is part of the work and the things that you're struggling with, and that these are the things that are going to be part of a bigger conversation throughout 2025 and beyond. The other thing that I would add is thinking about this, and this is the slide that I borrowed if folks are familiar more than likely with EAB and just the EAB research arm, is this larger conversation when we think about public confidence and the confidence of the public in higher education. And so I think this slide is interesting because we realize that higher education has become very partisan. I won't spend too much time on this slide, but I will say that, what we're largely hearing is the critique of value. So we know that the rising costs, post-traditional or postgraduate outcomes are not where they need to be for all students. Low quality programs or programs that don't offer social mobility or fueling debt. And there's inadequate support systems. So even as I think about, I'm excited about the work that you all will be doing with the replication of ACE and ASAP program, is making sure that those student supports are there as well. But then when we think about on the right, and there's this idea of values and the values of free speech, meritocracy, and personal and fiscal responsibility, and democracy and national security, we're seeing that there's a misunderstanding in terms of the work that we're trying to do when it comes to our equity efforts. But when we think about where and how do we come together, CCA is a nonpartisan organization. We will work with anybody to do this work. We also realize that there are many things that have to change. So when we think about value versus value, there are shared concerns. And you see those down the middle, many of which I've already spoke about in terms of what was on the slide, in terms of disruptors. And then these are the things that just haven't been appreciated or just haven't taken hold in the ways that we would need for a sector. So I'm going to kind of click in for a moment to talk about AI, because AI is quite a disruptor. And when we think about where and how and what institutions are doing in this regard, we find a couple of different things. And I think the best thing to say is at this point is to say there are individual plans to get onto AI, and then there's institutional plans. And they often are not tied together. There are usually, we find with some institutions, they may be guided. We find that there may be faculty or staff who are independently kind of driving some of these initiatives. And then we largely see that there's many institutions that are left behind. So when we think about that, the left behind piece, I think the part that's problematic always ends up being maybe the under-resourced institutions, our community colleges, those who may serve specific populations or mission-specific organizations. And so as we're thinking about the innovating, the exploring, and the observing, we see folks on very different spectrums. And so I wanted to share this because this was something that we did at our annual convening in November, which we conducted very much an informal poll to say where folks were. So the end here was about 73 individuals who participated in it. And we asked them to kind of reflect, right? Where do you find yourself on this curve? And I think given the mission of CCA, it's not surprising. We work with so many under-resourced, but then also regional and different types of organizations, not typically the R1s. And the R1s is where we're seeing a lot of the innovation. So it's not surprising not to see that many there. But as we think about this, there's 56% of the response were from community colleges, 42% were from colleges and universities. And while it's not a formal study, it does provide kind of a snapshot of how institutions are navigating, where they are. But I will say, to give a little bit more nuance, is that we know that there is hesitation about the adoption of many of these in terms of the responsibility, the AI, the infrastructure, and just making sure that it's done right, that it does help and does not harm. So when we talk about, and I want to talk a little bit more about the innovating section of AI, exploring, observing, I put this chart up here just so you could get a sense of what does that mean and how are we thinking about this. So we did a number of case studies, and I'll share that report in just a moment. But what we're seeing is that the majority of institutions are in the exploring stage. Maybe they have gotten one or two vendors or others that they're working on. Maybe they are adding new AI features. There may be decentralized access, or for folks who want to be early adopters, but not adoption across the college. But it's not surprising because that's the same type of lag that we've seen across many different types of technologies or enterprise systems. But when we say about the observing, I also want to engage with the anti-AI folks, because we also realize that technical interventions in themselves are not a turnkey for the body of work that we need to do, but we also do realize that technology can support our efforts, where students can self-service, staff can have access to and democratize data. So largely, like the body of work, so if folks work with SUNY, launch, but if not, I am the co-lead for the Council on Equitable AI. And essentially this group came together in 2024 because we knew there was a need, and we knew that there would be a lag in terms of funding and the ability for all institutions to equitably access AI. And so when we talk about AI, we think about investing in AI competencies. I pulled this up because I know that you may be at different places, but I want, as you kind of stair step the work that you're doing individually across departments and across your system, I just want to bring out some core competencies that we found from our conversations with colleges and universities about what is really important. So of course, I'm just going to go through a couple of these. I think the last three are pretty self-explanatory, but of course, mission alignment. Is this aligning with the mission and strategic plan, and does it possess clear, effective, and measurable outcomes, right? That doesn't always happen whenever we're bringing something in. And we realize that multiple people have to be at the table when we're speaking to this type of technology. Now, when we think about that area of mission alignment, there's potential investments that could be there. It could be about leadership development. It could be about data, collecting data on student perspective around AI and what they would like to see within the classroom. Or it could potentially be a strategy to align AI investments with institutional missions and goals. Now, when we speak about resource management, this is also that piece of kind of just planning out, saying, we understand, we're forecasting, and we're managing the broad spectrum of short and long-term costs associated with AI adoption, right? Because we know that it looks different in different types of institutions. So potential investments there could be chargeback infrastructure, procurement process for AI vendors to make sure that when you're talking about mission alignment and pulling it back to that as well, that you're aware that it serves the mission and it supports the body of students that you have and the needs that you have for your institution. But then also an analysis of AI, of existing investments and their potential AI features. And then the last I'm going to touch on before I move on to the next slide is really about responsible use. This is really about internally establishing, and you may already have many of these policies or are already looking at them as a team or a subgroup, is about establishing and enforcing AI policies, frameworks, and our guidelines. You know, much of what we saw when it first came out was about the punitive use of AI, but now how are we engaging students to engage with it in such a way that it becomes part of the larger curriculum, and it also could be a way to ensure support and efficiency for staff as well. And we just released a generating college completion, the chart to AI adoption. So we will be sharing out these slides, but just wanted to share that with you, that this is a resource that you can utilize. And then if you want to connect with myself or any of the content experts who provide examples or information in this publication, please reach out. So as I talk about this larger challenge of AI adoption and the where and how and what it will look like, we already know that many folks are already using the AI. But what I used to do this kind of thing of like, okay, who's using AI? And it used to be a small smattering of people. Now there's more people, and more of a question I ask is, who was taught to use AI? What kind of guidelines were given to you? What kind of support are you giving at your college? So we know that many people are doing this or are part of this work, but not everybody is involved. And so I also want to highlight this and go back to the mental health challenge of if there isn't organizational a plan or a conversation about when and how this is going to support institutions, or where and how and if individuals should be engaged in this work, that can really provide stress, distress, and dis-ease. And so as you think about this larger kind of network of what this would look like, we are asking ourselves and many others to upskill into this work and to learn new skills. Where and how do we provide the space for that? And where and how do we provide the guidance? And so this is something that I just put together because I thought it would just be helpful. There isn't a single repository about how folks are using AI across roles, but I thought this would be helpful. This comes from a couple of different surveys, Titan Partners that folks are familiar with, who always do a kind of a student success technology kind of landscape of the land and what they're hearing. But really what we're saying here is, students it was really basic with students when they were first doing it, creating, searching the internet, checking grammar. But now we know that they're using it in many of their STEM majors in terms of helping to understand a problem or break down a problem for greater comprehension. For faculty, and you'll see the kind of the less to more, oops, sorry about that. you see the less to more on the side, so you get a sense of where folks are going and where they're leading to, is talking about automatic grading or just redesigning assessments to counter AI for student success professionals. And so I just think about as a student-facing individuals and support services and others. It's also about the use of chatbots, drafting emails and communications when we think about humanistic connections, getting help in terms of drafting or what that looks like, fielding or testing language across different groups, and then also assisting students with career search, career exploration, et cetera. And then when you see on the far right-hand side, thinking about senior administrators, now we're seeing, and we have been seeing about the gleaning of insights, because we know enrollment, student success, advancement, and success is a big piece of it, but then also in terms of the marketing materials, as you're looking to engage with and reinvest with how and the different ways that you're supporting the different types of learners. And then the last thing that I'll point out there is the optimizing course scheduling, which is really about understanding and being student-centered in the ways and the options in terms of where and how they can not only apply or register for a semester, but for further semesters out. So it does not require, you don't have to always go back to your students and wondering if you've retained them, if they're still on track, or any of the sports that they may need. I'm just going to pause for a second to look at the chat to see if there's any questions or comments that came up. Oh, yes, and thank you for sharing that article, Donna. And so largely at a large level, thinking about keeping up with tech and enterprise AI, we do realize that at a large level is lagging. I do want to note that I do know that Empire AI, and that's going to be a larger piece of the work that's happening across SUNY in the state of New York. But these are also things to think about as I had mentioned before, in terms of where do we see the early investments. And so it is really about alleviating capacity challenges for many of our colleagues who are in enrollment and student success. So many of you are probably familiar with the AI assistants and the chatbots. And so they continue kind of to make history. That article that Donna shared in terms of CSU continues to do more work in that. And so they're really a leader when you're looking for or wanting to understand or have conversations about what the work is being done there. Is a great institution to connect with. And then, as you're probably familiar, there was, and at this point, not sure if this funding has been affected. So let me be clear about that, because I know that there's Title III grants and others that are affected by the freeze that we have on some of our funds. But as of last year, December last year, there was $4.6 million to do a study on the benefits of AI enhanced classroom bots. And so that's a growing area going into teaching and learning, where we're getting and seeing more depth within AI adoption and AI support. And so I put this one here because there is, as you can imagine, there's a number of task forces, a number of councils, working groups. Ours is one of them, many of them in the mix. But, the sweet spot of making AI and AI adoption exactly where and what it needs to be is really about being informed and connected across multiple levels. Now, the federal piece, I think, is going to be tough. So I kind of will leave that out, because we've already seen the removal of much of the work of the Office of Educational Technology in terms of responsible use. And I'll talk about that on a coming slide. But when we talk about regionally, state, city, towns, institution, there really needs to be a conversation about where and how, what we can learn from others and how we can support each other in terms of just making sure that AI works, not just for students, not for those who are part of our learning community, but even thinking about more broadly for our communities who may be looking or need to upskill, need to get a short-term credential, right? So with CCA, we talk about making sure that credentials of degrees and credentials of value. And so this is where that kind of piece comes into place. And so on the right-hand side, I talk about the Online Consortium of Oklahoma, because they have devised, and there's been about maybe a 211% increase in computer science and AI degrees and programs. This is all to say that partnerships that we may have had that may not have been as strong in the past are ones that we need to fortify as we think about the sector disruptors and the pressures that we have from tech, workforce, and corporate partners as well. And so this kind of goes back to when we talk about the democracy and where we are in America and talking about leading with values. One of Biden's most far-reaching executive orders was to make sure that harm and bias is was not a part of and was mitigated in terms of AI and the creation of AI materials. Suresh, who's at Brown University, has talked quite a bit about this, and we're actually seeing this now. So even though I may have created the slide back in November, we're seeing this now in real time about the regulations that are being pulled back and the individuals who at the corporate or tech sectors are not are peeling back some of their risk assessments and just the safety and regulations that they had before, which is going to be problematic in this sector, and thinking about the ways that it may negatively impact our students as we think about some of these technologies or faculty and others. So I said a lot there, but I would be remiss if I didn't talk about all of the things that are creating a bit of disruption, and then also just the pressure that you have in terms of the ways that you're thinking about planning and supporting for your students 2025 and beyond. And so at this point, I just want to turn to just thinking about inside CCA, who are our people, go over our strategies, and just give you a little overview of our tools for change. And so our mission is clear, right? We're nonpartisan, but we are here complete college, completing college rates, and closing institutional performance gaps. And so we do that by working with here, SUNY, states, institutions, and partners. And that's really about the reforms and policies that will also improve. And when we're talking about AI, is potentially accelerate student success. And we do this work because we know that there needs to be a place where all learners can graduate. And we also realize that there's going to be lifelong learners. So where do we make that arc for them to not only when and how they need to continue on those pathways, to get off those pathways as they need to, and then to come back to continue to get that continued learning and support within their communities. As we know, many of our students are in place. So how do we make sure that's available for them within the radius of their home communities, or viable for them as we think about even larger needs about digital access and support for students who may not be on campus for us as well. And so I would just love for a moment just to talk a little bit about our team and the folks who are here for us. Many of you may know that CCA has been, we kind of like to say, here we grow again. And so we have added a number of new members because as we do this work, we realize that there is so much work to do, and we need a number of different experts to support us in this. And so as prior, I was your kind of engagement or your support lead for the state of SUNY, or for SUNY system. Now that is going to be held by Jonathan Gowan, who just started with us not too long ago. And so I just want to invite Jonathan to just come off mute, introduce yourself to the SUNY team.
Thank you so much, Meacie, and good afternoon, everyone. I am thrilled to be here, thrilled to be learning more about the work that CCA has done, especially in New York. I am really proud to say that I actually grew up right in the shadow of one of SUNY's major campuses. I grew up in Pennsylvania, but just over the border from Binghamton. So I've long been aware and admired the great work that the SUNY system does. So I'm really excited to work with you. And as Meacie said, I'll be engaging with a variety of partners to help elevate CCA's mission, not just in New York, but across the broader Northeast region. Thank you so much for welcoming me in.
Yeah, and you'll learn more about Jonathan as the time goes on. But Jonathan, please do me a favor, put your email in the chat so if folks want to reach out to you after the webinar. He'll be your main point of contact. And then when we think about a transformation team and scaling, it's a number of individuals who, when we get into those projects and the work that we do, when we get these funded projects, which I'll talk a little bit about, these are the individuals that you'll be intertwining with. So I realize our new people are in color. We're usually in black and white, but I think it's a nice kind of way to point them out. Janelle Jennings isn't on the line today, but I did just want to introduce you to, I believe Flori is on the line, just for her to say hello. She's the newest member of our team too, and brings quite a bit of expertise to the team.
I do apologize, Meacie, because of a family emergency, Flori did have to drop off.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And so we're thrilled to have, as we think about the individuals who have the diverse experience and lives in terms of how to support our work, Flori has really been very intimate and is part of the Anapesia community. And she grew up in the Rota Islands, if you're familiar with those, just not too far from Guam. And in terms of her body of work across institutions, but then also in college access success and achievement, she's going to be a vital partner as well. So just wanted to share a little bit about how we're growing and the teams that's there to support you. Now, when we're thinking about research, data, and policy, your go-tos, and many of the folks on the line may already know Charles, Carrie Hodge, and Haley, who came on board within the last year or so in terms of that body of work. But as you can see here, as you think about questions, things, support that you may need, any of these individuals you can reach out to. But Jonathan going forward will be your main point of contact. So thank you, Jonathan, for that intro. And so again, I want to talk about the larger vision, right? The thing is, when we talk about the body of work and the strategies that CCA does, we know that it's a complex and intertwined. And so when we talk about our pillars across our 4 pillars, we know that that's braided into what student success looks like, that no one individual can solve them. And so that's why we take this very large, simultaneous and intersectional approach. Now, many of you know what's on the right-hand side about not graduating within that time, the number of those who are leaving without a job related to their studies or not entering graduate school, the access number of credits we still continue to have, not only just for poor student choices, but uninformed choices, right? In terms of just the information that they're not being given or they're just not aware of in terms of how to get to a timely degree. And then the cost for each additional year spent in college beyond on-time graduation is substantial and is taking away from that individual's kind of net worth and building of wealth as well. And then, you know, this number, even though it says 60%, that varies quite widely, and we know it's quite higher across different student populations. But the real thought of basic needs insecurity, right? So most folks think about housing and food, but we also have to be aware of mental health, access to healthcare, child giving or caregiving support, access to it. It's many things, right? Thinking about low cost or no cost textbooks in terms of just easing the financial burdens for many of our students. And so here are our strategies, right? Do students know their purpose? Are they aligned with the reason of why they're enrolled in our institutions in the first place? Is there a structure and a clear path in terms of how to get there? And is there momentum to support that? And then undergirding all of that, do they have the support when and how they need across their journey to make sure as academic and non-academic things come into the foray? And so many of you are familiar with purpose in terms of just aligning the college experiences to student goals, but I just want to highlight here that 2 of the topic areas that are coming out is going to be about first year experience. We're going to dive into talking about freshman seminars and the use of AI within them. We're going to talk about purpose first as academic career alignment. When so many are questioning the value of a degree, we also have to make sure that we're upholding to make sure that that degree does have value, and it is tied to either local needs or global needs that we see within the workforce, or the skills that are needed within the workforce. And structure in terms of making sure that we're clarifying that path. You're going to have conversations and learn more from practitioners about academic maps and milestones, and then also those SMART schedules to make sure that your students can get the courses as they need them. And then when it comes to momentum, it's just making sure that we have those strong starts. So we got to make sure that we have really well-designed curriculum sequences. We got to make sure and minimize the miscommunication of credit hours. Again, that's a place where AI or other technologies can support that. And then we also make sure that we are consistently telling them what that would look like and informing them along the way. And then largely this bucket of support, which I'm excited about in terms of the investments that have been made in terms of the transportation funds, is really about support, making sure we have the support for students as they need them, as that growing need expands beyond not only within the classroom, but within support. So as we think about even in this moment, I don't have all of the student populations noted here, but really talking about in this moment, what are we saying and who is being trained on the birthright citizenship? If someone comes to the university asking or inquiring about someone's immigration status or citizenship status, what does that look like? Where we can make sure that our students still feel comfortable and know that this is a safe place for them, that there isn't going to be a threat of deportation. Now, there's a lot of rumors that are out there, and we have to make sure that we're aware of what we're used to be safe spaces, that has changed in some way. But we also know that there's a number of individuals who are out there, bad faith actors who are using some of these executive actions to go after and act out on individuals. But I also want to mention too that even though they think that they're going after individuals who are just on immigration status, that this affects many more within our BILPOC, our global majority community. So there's been a number of instances where individuals who were Black, Mexican, Guatemalan, Asian, Pacific Islander, and others who have been addressed or harassed because of this idea of an America that's not theirs, or they may not belong here. And so those threats are real, and we have to make sure that we're supporting our communities as those things happen in real time. And so the approach of CCA is that we really face complexion head on. We trust our data, we design for complexity, we reiterate when we need to, we build shared accountability, right? We're all in this together, and this really is a participatory model and a co-design model to make sure that you're getting the support that you need as you need it. But we also connect you with experts, right? We also know that our work is better when we collaborate. And so we also are never afraid to champion a critical piece of a puzzle and amplify insights and wins from across the field. And many times we have amplified in the past some of SUNY's successes, and that of CUNY as well. And so when I'm talking about those experts, I wanted to dive a little bit deeper for folks. When we're talking about the fellows and the experts and content experts that you have access to, I want to share on the slide that we have 70+ experts, including fellows who are across the spectrum. As you can see here, we have former commissioners, presidents, deputies, chancellors, but also, and more importantly, at some point, we're talking about directors of disability access. We're talking about senior fellows from the Aspen Institute and individuals who come from institutions who understand and have been under-resourced, but then also have had the funds at times too, in terms of how to generate and get the support that you need on campus. So as you think about buy-in and change management, and you think about communication plans and getting everybody together, you think about addressing initiative fatigue, you think about structure, pathways, all of those things, these individuals and our broad network is here to support you. And of course, you see Donna Linderman, who we have a long relationship there as well, who is a CCA fellow as well. So now I'm going to talk a little bit more. Didn't talk about this at the Student Alliance as much. We touched on it, but I just want to talk about a little bit about the work that we do with CCA. This is really about uncovering what works. And so there's many times that the projects and the funding, the publications that we put out there are just realizing or just framing critical issues and offering some solutions to some of the most pressing problems that we still have to this day. Many of those can be tied back to funding, but then also many of those could be taken back to kind of the status quo of this is the way that we've always done it. But what the pandemic has showed us is that we've also can pivot very quickly. So we know that when there is a need that we can press and do it quite quickly, but how do we then make these the priorities as we can to make sure we support the work? So as you see there's the unfunded mandates, and then there was a report that we had come out last year called Complete College America that just talked about the undergirding of civic engagement and democracy, so that folks could be more widely engaged in this piece, in this critical time in terms of where and how to support, how the government works, ways that we can engage with the government, and also reverse the state funding that has been dwindling across our states for over the last past decade or so. And partly what we do with this work too as well is we do the reports, we do the resources, but we also have webinars that we share so you can connect with those experts. And then we facilitate learnings, whether they're workshops or regional convenings, for you to broaden your network, but also to go deeper into the implementations and change management. Another part of the work that we do as well is also about coaching and support, right? So we realize that we have to talk about initiative fatigue. It's really real. And so how do we align this all to the larger institutional goals to make sure that we're working in lockstep across departments and across collaborations that maybe have not been in place? And so you can see on the left-hand side from 1 to 5, we talk about the process of how we get there. But we also wanted to share the examples of just the way that we use data, the way that we assemble different types of teams in terms of just what are the needs of your institution, system, or department, and just the implementation that we provide so you can learn from one another and make sure that you can garner some key wins from the beginning of your efforts. And so, let me tether this a little bit to talk about the actual projects that we have on the ground at CCA. So the projects, all of these projects come through a collaboration of conversations that we have with campus partners and systems, but then also with funders. And so the first one I want to talk about, and I'm looking at time, so I'm not going to do the video, but you'll have access to the video too, which is an overview of the CCA Accelerator project. Now, this is through this work, we are building a cohort of more than 100 institutions in 20 plus states that will conduct assessments of institutional performance, build data capacity, and develop and implement strategies to improve student success. Now, it was launched in 2020, and this is something that's through the Bill and Melinda Gates project. And what that really means, and this is a project that goes through 2027, and what that really means is that we're advising and supporting institutions through transformational change in 11 areas. That includes guided pathways, advising, dev ed, digital learning, emergency aid, IT, institutional policy, leadership and culture, strategic planning, and institutional research. And then one of our newest things that we're doing that came out of the work of our Council for AI, and a little bit of a blind spot in terms of where we can deepen some of the learnings and practices for our institutions, is the AI Readiness Consortium. Now, we selected 5 open access institutions, and we're really engaged in this pretty ambitious multi-year initiative designed to prepare students with critical artificial intelligence skills and hands-on experience. And this was built in collaboration with Ripen. Those are active links when you get the PDF, so you'll be able to click on those. And this was really about assisting these institutions with embedding AI competencies into their academic programs. And so we look forward to just kind of building that out, talking more about experiential learning, and just ensuring students are ready to thrive in an AI-driven market. Now, the participating organizations kind of range for a number of different places. Atlanta Metropolitan State College, the City Colleges of Chicago, the CUNY system is taking part of that, Pikes Peak State College, and Ohio Community College as well. And so as we think about this more largely, we know that there is many learnings that we will be sharing off of that body of work. So more to come there, but just want you to be aware of some of the things that we'll be sharing out as we do more of that work. And then, the PBCC, HBCC, for those who may not be familiar with those acronyms, that's the primary Black community colleges and the historically Black community colleges, of which many folks were not aware of these institutions, and they have flown under the radar for a number of years. And really what that body of work was just the development of a cohort to really increase the capacity for collaboration across these institutions, resource sharing, and establishment of a network where there wasn't before, for collaboration and partnership to continue to build a community with the necessary resources that they need within that sector. And then lastly, I want to talk a bit about the student success or the Complete College Photo Library. Now, this was an effort, you think about in terms of diversity, representation, and others, there's a reason why folks have an idea about who should and should not go to college. And a lot of it is misinformed in terms of what we see in the media or what is even shared in terms of the pictures. And so Complete College America, this is going to be available late spring, so we're really excited about this. And had colleagues who were just at the University of Southern Nevada who took photos of the prison education program there, right? So programs that definitely never get shine or get to hear about the work that's happening there. And really this was about an intentional and authentic library that captures students and real life experience and to enhance and transform higher education, right? Because we know that if we can't show actual learning experiences and the types of students who are there, it really misinforms the narrative of who and how and the students who are at our institutions. And so these photos will be free and accessible for all and across sectors using just a Creative Commons license. So that's something that you can access as well. Oops. And so the other thing that I want to talk about, and the last thing I'll talk about in this section, is really about our advocacy and alliance. Now, we have a large consortium of folks who are really holding themselves accountable to create a newer higher education system. And so that really is about reforms and toolkits that we've developed to support implementation efforts. So as you're thinking about the different areas that you own or different supports that you may need, many times we have those resources or toolkits available for you. So whether it's something in terms of working with a workshop or a convening or a student success summit for a keynote, there's different ways that we can partner. But also there's deeper partnerships that we have with national organizations when we're pushing for policy changes as well. We're part of the Higher Education Equity Network called HEAN, And so when we think about the larger body of what we want to advocate for state and federal policies, and full stop, most of what we will be advocating for will be mostly in the state realm as we're still figuring out what's going to happen at the federal level. And so this is one of the bigger questions was, how can we engage with CCA? What does that look like? This has, the Opportunities and Events has a hyperlink that will allow you to subscribe to our monthly newsletter. And so this is the one that just went out a couple weeks ago. And this is really a place to engage with events, learning projects, and staff. So like if any folks are going to the Dream Conference, I will be there in Philly. So would love to see you there. But those are the type of things that get shared out in terms of where you can see CCA staff members at events. We are growing our team of inpatient reformers. So you see there in terms of a job board, but we also put national job board information there as well. Any of our latest publications, but then we're always kind of studying and learning as well. And so research and articles that might further your work will be added there as well. We also, across, I feel like we usually probably have about 3 to 5 funding opportunities across the year, or just even projects to participate in co-design or focus groups. And so those are the places where we'll put that information just to keep you abreast of it. So as you're thinking about that body of work, how you want to get support, or if you want to get more, just be more in the know, this is a great place to get that information. And then speaker request form, right? You may want us for a workshop, a convening, as I mentioned before, for keynote sessions. We do have a speaker request form on our website. Now, we know that many of them, you may not know who you want as a speaker, so you don't need to know, but we have just a list of individuals, or you can select all if you're unsure, but just basically describe the information, what you're looking to accomplish. And actually it would be Jonathan who would follow up with you. So Jonathan, who you met earlier today. But really anything runs the gamut. So when we're talking about expert testimonial, so anything about policy perspective or just change management work, strategy consultation, webinars and virtual engagements, we're here to support you in whatever ways we can. And so this is just a large list. These are most common requests, but it doesn't mean that this captures all the requests. So if there's something you're looking for or other things you might have a question about, please reach out to us and we'll point you in the right direction. And so I always love sharing this slide because this talks about the breadth of this work. And I think it's also important in this area when we're feeling a bit maybe overwhelmed about all the actions and disruptions that are taking part in our field. You are not alone. And we're here to support you in that body of work. So when you look across all the folks who are doing this body of work, or you want someone to connect with someone who is doing something similar and you just need that point of connection, this is what the CCA Alliance is here for. And if there is something you want to amplify, if you would like to become a content expert, right, please reach out to us. There's a variety as you're thinking about the different strategies that you might want to get involved in or be a part of or provide resources for. We welcome that collaboration and that deep partnership. So just know that there's a variety of different ways that you can plug into the resources and support of CCA. And most of these I've already listed out, but I just want to put a slide in terms of where we're seeing and what folks have. And this isn't us tooting our own horn. This is what folks have said in terms of what they see as the biggest benefits of the CCA Alliance. So as you're thinking about policy audits, maybe data analysis workshops, professional development. So we have our CCA University, which is going to be launched officially with a number of different courses. And so as you're thinking about professional development to undergraduate work that you're doing at the institution or take it further, those would be opportunities for you to take advantage of with CCA. And so if you think about this, right, does it matter? Are we seeing the results? Well, yes, we are. We're seeing it in real time. Over the last year, we added three more Alliance members. Next week, we will be adding Kansas officially to a roster of the Alliance members. So as you think about that body of work, we now have 53 state systems and consortium who are participating in the Alliance. Across the institutions who are engaged with us, we've seen a 1.5% improvement in community college graduation rates, and then a 10% increase in credentials and degrees awarded by our CCA Alliance members since 2015. Now, those are some results, but not all the results. And so as we think about what is the biggest things when we think about kind of implementing this movement, the way that we support you, and the ways that we think about this body of work is always, always, always about systematic change, being steadfast in our critical issues, confirming our broad commitment, We don't want to reinvent. We don't want to pilot. We want to commit, but we do understand when pilots are useful. And we also want to make sure that we can sustain scale through organizational reforms and policy. So when we think about strategic finance or embedding this body of work into the larger work so that it could not be removed, that's really what we're talking about, because this work isn't work that should be done on the side. It should be embedded in everything that we do. And so I've said quite a lot over this last 40 or 50 minutes, but I just want to bring it back up to just say, you know, these are the ways initially that we are supporting you, but there are multiple ways, as you learned, that we can, an opportunity that will provide you in terms of the ways that you want to or need to engage across the Alliance. So February 27th is going to be the next one, March 13th, April 3rd, and April 10th. But know that you can talk with me as well. And what you learn, and I just want to reiterate, is that across these, we will bring in and talk about AI and its effects in these areas and the ways to undergird it within the technology within your systems. But know that this is, even though you have these webinars, this isn't a moment in time. You can reach out to these individuals further after this session. So those are individuals who will be available for you. And so this is, you know, this is that moment, right? We really want to create the higher education system that students deserve, and that will provide them the support and the economic mobility that they need, and most definitely what our country needs. So as we think about the ways in which we can support you, just know we are here. We are here for you. We know that we are in a divisive time, but we have more that's in common, that's different. And so as we think about how we improve this system of higher education for all, know that CCA will always be a resource for you. So thanks for your time.
Thank you so much, Meacie and Jonathan, for that very informative presentation. We covered a lot. And again, just to reiterate, as an Alliance member, SUNY campuses are entitled to all of these resources that CCA has to offer. So please take advantage of them. I think we are coming up on the top of the hour, might have time for maybe, you know, one or two questions. Feel free to drop some in the chat as well. And I'm also going to enter into the chat our first session, which will rely on an expert that CCA recruited to talk about academic and career alignment. So if you have a question, please feel free to raise your hand. I'll turn this over to Jennifer Snyder to help close us out as the Q&A finalizes, but also drop questions in the chat if you have them. And please join me in thanking Meacie and Jonathan yet again for their help.
Thanks, Casey. We just had one quick question in the chat for right now. We will be sharing the slides. So those will go out in an email as soon as the recording has rendered. And that way you can have both if you would like to rewatch any portion of what Meacie shared. And then also the links will be live in those slides, right, Meacie? So people can click on anything that you're referencing there. Mm-hmm. I'm just looking, looks like a lot of thank yous. I know you did cover a lot, but there's a lot to cover right now, right?
Yep, there is.
A lot of good information. If you have only registered for this particular session and would like to register for more, you can reference your registration confirmation email to be able to pop back into the registration and add any of the other sessions that you'd like. Just looking at the chat really quick. There's a good slide I would like to use in a presentation. I want to know the references for the data. The barriers to the vision are complex slide. Is that?
Oh, sure.
Hi, that was me.
Oh, sure.
That's a good slide, and I would just keep it exactly as is, but I'm going to be presenting at the Good You conference, and I would love to. It's all about how do we address some of these barriers. So do you know, would you be able to send me an email, like maybe where the reference is?
Absolutely.
Just in case.
Yeah, drop your email in the chat and I'll send it out to you. That most of them came from analysis of the iPads and then Hope Center data and a couple of different other areas, the Chef report from the SHIO. So I'll get those over to you for your inclusion.
Thank you. It was really good, by the way. Nice job.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone have questions or comments before we let you go? Thanks for bearing with us with the Zoom issue. Thankfully, we didn't have that. So we were able to just do one continuous meeting.
Always that planning, plan it, don't panic.
Right, and don't, we tried to plan as best we could, right?
Wonderful. Well, I hope everyone takes care of themselves. Be safe out there, whether winter conditions or the snow coming down, stay warm. And try to take some self-care for yourself too, as you're doing this really, really tough work at a very pivotal time.
Great, thanks again. We hope to see you at the next session. Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll see you again soon.